Your soulmate needs you now. What just happened will leave you speechless. My beloved child, listen carefully, don't skip this message, because something has shifted in your soulmate's world, and the reason their heart is suddenly reaching toward you may be completely different from what you imagine. There was a moment when everything became quiet around them, yet inside their mind, your name became louder than ever. Something happened that forced them to stop pretending they were fine. Something reminded them of you at exactly the moment they needed comfort, clarity, and a sense of home. They may not know how to explain it yet, but deep inside, they are realizing that the person they pushed away, ignored, misunderstood, or tried to forget may be the very person they need to hear from now. Stay until the end, because the final revelation may change the way you understand the silence between you. There are moments in life when a person can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. Your soulmate may have experienced one of those moments recently. They could have been sitting in a room full of conversations while feeling disconnected from everyone around them. They could have smiled, answered questions, continued working, and acted as though everything was normal. But beneath that surface, something was happening. Their emotional walls were beginning to crack. For a long time, your soulmate may have convinced themselves that they were strong enough to handle everything alone. They told themselves they did not need anyone. They told themselves the past was finished. They told themselves they had moved forward. They may even have tried to convince other people that you no longer mattered to them. But there is a difference between moving forward and genuinely letting go. Sometimes a person can continue living their life while carrying an unfinished conversation inside their heart. And you may be that unfinished conversation. Something happened that brought you back into their thoughts with unusual intensity. Maybe they heard a song you once shared. Maybe they visited a familiar place. Maybe someone mentioned something that reminded them of you. Maybe they found an old photograph, message, gift, or memory they had forgotten they kept. Or perhaps nothing obvious happened at all. Perhaps they simply woke up one morning with a feeling they could not explain. Your soulmate thought about you. Not casually. Not for a few seconds. They felt the weight of your absence. And that feeling frightened them. Because when someone has spent so long convincing themselves that they are okay without you, suddenly realizing they are not okay can feel like losing control. They may have asked themselves why your memory still affects them. Why they still wonder what you are doing. Why they still imagine what would happen if they called you. Why they still care whether you are happy. And then something inside them whispered a question. What if I waited too long? That question has been growing. They may be afraid you have moved on. They may be afraid you no longer care. They may be afraid that the person who once waited for them has finally stopped waiting. And strangely enough, that fear may be pushing them toward you. But listen carefully, when I say your soulmate needs you now, I do not mean you are responsible for rescuing them. You are not responsible for carrying their emotional weight. You are not required to abandon your peace because someone else is struggling. You are not required to chase them or force a conversation. This message is about emotional realization, not obligation. Your soulmate may be reaching a point where they finally understand what your presence meant. Sometimes we recognize the value of something only after its absence becomes impossible to ignore. When you were there, they may have assumed you would always be there. When you cared, they may have taken your care for granted. When you reached out, they may have assumed another opportunity would come. When you stayed patient, they may have believed your patience had no limit. But now they are beginning to understand that love is not something a person can repeatedly postpone without consequences. You eventually become tired. You eventually stop explaining. You eventually stop chasing. And your soulmate may have noticed that change. Perhaps you became quieter. Perhaps you stopped sending messages. Perhaps you stopped reacting to their behavior. Perhaps you stopped checking for signs. Perhaps you simply began focusing on your own life. And that silence spoke louder than any argument could have. Your soulmate may have expected you to keep reaching for them. Instead, you pulled your energy back. And suddenly they felt the space where your attention used to be. That space became uncomfortable. They started wondering whether they had lost access to you permanently. And that possibility may be one of the reasons they are emotionally shaken now. There is another layer to this. Your soulmate may be dealing with something they have not shared publicly. It could be pressure at work, family tension, a difficult decision, financial responsibility, emotional exhaustion, or a personal disappointment. You may never know the details unless they choose to tell you. But whatever happened, it may have reminded them of the person they once felt safe enough to be vulnerable with. You. They may remember how you listened without immediately judging them. They may remember how you could tell when something was wrong even when they said they were fine. They may remember the way your presence calmed them. And suddenly they are realizing something uncomfortable. They miss being understood. Not admired. Not entertained. Not distracted. Understood. That is a completely different need. Someone can have friends and still feel misunderstood. Someone can have family and still feel emotionally alone. Someone can have money, success, status, and achievements and still crave one person who simply says, "I understand." Your soulmate may be craving that kind of connection. And that is why your memory has become so powerful. They are not only missing your presence. They are missing the emotional safety they associated with you. Maybe they are replaying a conversation you had months or years ago. Maybe something you said back then suddenly makes sense now. Maybe you warned them about something and they dismissed it. Maybe you encouraged them when nobody else did. Maybe you believed in them during a period when they did not believe in themselves. Now they are remembering. And memory has a strange way of becoming clearer when life becomes difficult. The words that once seemed ordinary suddenly become precious. The small gestures they ignored suddenly become unforgettable. The person they assumed would always be there suddenly becomes the person they fear they may never see again. That is what may have happened. Something made your soulmate realize that time is not unlimited. They cannot keep postponing what their heart knows. They cannot keep hiding behind pride. They cannot keep pretending that silence means nothing. At some point, someone has to speak. And your soulmate may be closer to that point than you think. They may have typed a message and deleted it. They may have opened your profile and closed it. They may have searched for your name. They may have asked someone about you. They may have considered calling and then stopped. They may have written something they could not bring themselves to send. Do not assume these things are definitely happening in your specific situation. Instead, recognize the emotional pattern. Someone who has been avoiding their feelings can become restless when avoidance stops working. And their restlessness may eventually turn into action. There may be a moment when they finally say what they have been holding inside. I miss you. I need to talk to you. I have something to tell you. I was wrong. I should have handled things differently. Those words may sound simple. But for someone who has spent months or years protecting their pride, saying them could feel enormous. Your soulmate may have believed that admitting their feelings would make them weak. Now they are beginning to understand that hiding their feelings has cost them more. There is a reason this message feels urgent. Not because you need to panic. Not because something terrible must happen. But because emotional windows do not stay open forever. Sometimes people reach a moment when they finally become willing to communicate, and if both people are emotionally ready, a completely different conversation becomes possible. But that requires maturity from both sides. If your soulmate reaches out, do not immediately reopen every wound. Listen first. Ask questions. Let them explain. And then decide what you want. You are allowed to have boundaries. You are allowed to take your time. You are allowed to say, I need to think about this. You are allowed to forgive without immediately returning to the same relationship dynamic. And if they truly need you, they will respect that. Real love does not demand instant access. Real love understands healing. Your soulmate may also be discovering that the person they thought they wanted was not what they actually needed. Maybe they chased excitement. Maybe they valued appearances. Maybe they listened to people who told them what love should look like. But now they are realizing that peace is different. Consistency is different. Being understood is different. Being accepted without pretending is different. And those are the qualities they associate with you. This could be why someone else cannot easily replace the emotional space you occupied. They may have met other people. They may have tried to move on. They may have distracted themselves. But comparison keeps happening. Not because you are perfect. Not because nobody else has value. But because your connection carried something unique for them. There was a familiarity they could not reproduce. A comfort they could not manufacture. A sense of recognition that stayed in their memory. And now, after whatever happened, that memory has returned. Your soulmate may be standing at a crossroads. One direction says, keep pretending. The other says, tell the truth. One direction protects their pride. The other risks vulnerability. One direction keeps the past buried. The other opens the possibility of healing. And they know exactly what the second path requires. Courage. They have to face you. They have to face themselves. They have to face the decisions they made. They have to face the possibility that they were wrong. They have to accept that loving someone is not enough if you are unwilling to communicate, protect, and show up. That may be the lesson they are learning now. And perhaps you are learning one too. You do not have to prove your worth by waiting forever. You do not have to remain emotionally frozen while someone else decides what they want. You can continue living. You can continue growing. You can continue becoming the healthiest version of yourself. If your soulmate returns, let them meet the person you became while they were away. Let them see that your life did not stop. Let them understand that your heart may still have compassion, but your standards have grown stronger. That is not punishment. That is growth. And something beautiful can happen when two people meet again after growth. They may no longer repeat the same arguments. They may communicate differently. They may listen instead of assuming. They may ask instead of accusing. They may choose honesty instead of silence. That is the only kind of reunion worth having. Not a reunion driven by loneliness. A reunion driven by clarity. Not, I cannot live without you. But, I know who I am, I know what I want, and I want to build something healthy with you. That is the transformation this situation may be leading toward. Your soulmate may need emotional support, but they also need to learn how to support themselves. Your role is not to become their therapist, savior, or emotional lifeline. You can care about someone without carrying them. You can love someone without losing yourself. You can forgive someone without forgetting what happened. And you can remain open to love while continuing to protect your peace. That balance is powerful. Now imagine the moment your soulmate finally reaches out. You see their name appear. For a second, your heart stops. You wonder whether you should answer. You remember everything. The good. The bad. The silence. The pain. The memories. And then you breathe. You do not respond from panic. You respond from wisdom. Maybe the conversation begins awkwardly. Maybe they do not know how to explain everything. Maybe they say something small because they are testing whether the door is still open. But eventually the truth begins to come out. They tell you what happened. They tell you what they were feeling. They tell you what they regret. And perhaps the most shocking thing they say is not about the past. It is about the present. I still think about you. That sentence can change the atmosphere completely. But your response does not need to be immediate. Let the conversation breathe. Let their actions follow their words. If they are serious, they will not disappear after one emotional conversation. They will continue. They will demonstrate. They will show you that the realization was real. And if they do, you will have a decision to make. Not whether you are worthy. You already are. The decision is whether this person has become worthy of another opportunity. That is a completely different question. Your soulmate may be realizing that they need your presence, but you also deserve someone who recognizes your needs. You deserve reciprocity. You deserve effort. You deserve honesty. You deserve a relationship where both people can say, "We are on the same team." And perhaps this entire season has been preparing both of you for that understanding. There is something poetic about the way people sometimes return to the place where they felt most understood. Not because the past was perfect, but because the past contained something real. Maybe your soulmate finally recognizes that now. Maybe they are looking at old memories and seeing them through different eyes. Maybe they are realizing that the person they once thought was difficult was simply asking to be heard. Maybe they are realizing that your distance was not cruelty. It was exhaustion. Maybe they are realizing that your silence was not indifference. It was self-protection. And perhaps they are finally understanding the difference. This realization can be painful. But it can also be the beginning of maturity. If this message resonates with you, do not let it make you anxious. Let it make you calm. You do not need to run after anyone. You do not need to force a sign. You do not need to spend every hour wondering when the message will arrive. Live your life. Keep your heart peaceful. Let reality reveal itself. If your soulmate truly needs to speak with you, they have the ability to reach you through real-world communication. And when they do, you can decide what happens next. Maybe the relationship is rebuilt. Maybe you discover that the healthiest path is closure. Maybe you become friends. Maybe you begin again slowly. The future does not need to be forced today. What matters is that you remain grounded enough to recognize truth when it arrives. And here is the final part of the message. The reason your soulmate may need you now is not necessarily because they are falling apart. It may be because they are finally ready to stop pretending. They are ready to admit what they feel. They are ready to face what happened. They are ready to acknowledge the role they played. They are ready to stop letting fear make decisions for them. And perhaps, most importantly, they are ready to understand that needing someone is not weakness when that need comes from genuine connection. There was a time when they thought being strong meant needing nobody. Now they may be learning that strength also means knowing when to say, "I miss you." It means saying, "I was wrong." It means saying, "Can we talk?" It means being brave enough to risk hearing the truth. So if their name appears on your phone one day, remember this message. Do not panic. Do not immediately surrender your boundaries. Do not punish them either. Simply listen. Let truth have a chance to speak. And if they come with genuine accountability, consistent effort, and a heart ready to build something healthier, then perhaps the story between you is not finished. Perhaps it was simply waiting for both of you to become different people. People who can communicate. People who can forgive. People who can choose each other without losing themselves. People who understand that love is not proven by how much pain you can endure. Love is proven by how much truth, respect, patience, and effort you are willing to bring into the relationship. That is the love you deserve. And if your soulmate is truly moving toward you, they will eventually have to meet you there. Not halfway through empty promises. Not through temporary emotions. But through action. Through consistency. Through courage. So tonight, release the fear. Release the need to control the timing. Release the urge to chase. Your life is still moving. Your purpose is still unfolding. And whatever happens with this connection, you are not losing yourself again. You have learned too much. You have grown too much. You have survived too much. You know your value now. And perhaps that is the real reason your soulmate is suddenly feeling your absence so strongly. You stopped begging to be chosen. You started choosing yourself. And sometimes that is the moment another person's eyes finally open. They realize the person they once assumed would always wait has continued walking forward. They realize the heart they once took for granted has learned how to protect itself. They realize the door they thought would remain open forever may now require them to knock with honesty. And if they knock, you get to decide whether you open it. Not because you are desperate. Not because you are lonely. But because you have seen enough growth to believe another chapter might be possible. And if that chapter begins, let it begin differently. No games. No manipulation. No disappearing. No third-party interference. No endless uncertainty. Just two people speaking honestly about what happened and deciding whether something healthier can be built. That would be the real miracle. Not simply getting your soulmate back, but meeting them again as people who finally understand what love requires. So, my beloved child, stay calm. Something may be changing behind the scenes, but you do not need to chase what is meant to reveal itself through real action. If your soulmate needs to speak, let them find the courage. If they need forgiveness, let them ask. If they want another chance, let them prove it. And if they truly love you, let that love become visible through the choices they make. Because the most beautiful ending is not the moment they finally say, "I need you." The most beautiful ending is the moment they realize, "I don't want to lose myself, and I don't want to lose you either." That is when love stops being a fantasy and becomes a decision. That is when the past stops controlling the future. That is when two people stop wondering and finally start communicating. And perhaps the very thing that frightened your soulmate today will become the thing that gives them courage tomorrow. Your absence taught them your value. Your silence taught them reflection. The distance taught them perspective. And now the truth may be teaching them courage. So don't skip your own life while waiting for their next move. Keep growing. Keep healing. Keep becoming. If they return, let them meet the strongest, wisest, most peaceful version of you. And if they do not, know that you still have a future filled with possibilities you cannot yet see. Either way, you win when you refuse to abandon yourself. But if the person you love does come back with truth in their eyes and accountability in their words, remember this moment. Remember how long you waited for clarity. Remember how much you learned. And remember that love deserves a foundation stronger than fear. Because maybe what just happened did not destroy your connection. Maybe it finally forced your soulmate to stop running from it. And maybe, just maybe, the next message you receive will not be another goodbye. It will be the beginning of the conversation you both should have had a long time ago. Stay peaceful. Stay wise. Stay open but never lose yourself. Because the person who truly belongs in your life will not ask you to chase them into the darkness. They will have the courage to walk toward you in the light.